Hello everyone, my name is Abby and I'm the Young Adult Assistant at the Twin Lakes Library System and I use she, her pronouns. So today I wanted to talk about more underrated books that I have. And just to kind of recap, I feel like underrated books are just books I feel like don't get talked about very much in the YA community or ever get really recommended, and I feel like these books are all very good. Like my last video was about books that I felt were underrated, and so you can check that one out. But I have two more today to talk about, just because I thought this was fun. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So the first book that I have to talk about is Thanks for the Trouble by Tommy Wallach. This book is on Hoopla. We do not actually have it in our physical collection, but you can listen to the audiobook on Hoopla. So, there you go. This does not have a Common Sense Media recommendation rating. I would probably rate this like a 14 and older reader. I don't think there's too much intense content in it. It's been a little bit since I've read this book, but for the most part, I think it's pretty okay. So, this book follows a boy named Parker, and he has not spoken in 5 years. He went and he saw a very traumatic thing, and that caused him to develop mutism, and he doesn't really have a plan for his life anymore, and he doesn't really, want to do anything, and he just sort of kind of chills out and watches, hotel guests. He goes and sits in hotels and he watches hotel guests. And he's just there one day, watching the guests, and he also likes to write, so sometimes he writes about the guests, and he runs into this girl named Zelda, who has silver hair, and she claims to be way older than she looks, and Parker is kind of intrigued by her, and she's kind of intrigued by him, so they sort of meet and sort of go on an adventure together, and yeah, that's kind of the book. So why I loved this, I'm sorry, I can't speak today. So this book, I feel like it deals with some heavy things, like the traumatic, incident that Parker has to go through, mutism, grieving, growing up, just a bunch of different things, and it seems very heavy, but it does, the author does a good job of not having the whole narrative swallowed up by the heavy, because I don't think the main goal of this book is to be heavy. I think it's supposed to reflect on heavy topics, but I don't think that the writer was trying to do, a really deep, makes you sad when you read it sort of book. I think he was trying to instill some level of hope, and I feel like he accomplished that. But yeah. So I feel like he does a good job of not having the narrative swallowed up, and I think part of that is the tone of the book, which I also really like. So the tone of the book is very easy and sarcastic. I'm pretty sure you read just through Parker's sort of narration and sight, and he has a very sarcastic and witty voice, and it's a fun one to read, and it's really interesting, and I liked reading Parker's perspective and reading the way he thinks and hearing his voice through that way. Since he doesn't speak, you get to hear it through his narration style, which I think is really good. I think the relationship that develops between Parker and Zelda is really nice and cute, and I think it's well written, and it's very fast, but I think in the context of the story, it makes sense. You'll understand when you read it, or if you read it. But it develops very fast, but I feel like it's kind of a natural development. And some people don't really like Zelda. I don't really have a problem with her. And I think they play off of each other really well. And then the last thing I really like about this book is it kind of has some elements of magical realism, which you would not guess based just on this title, or this cover and this title. It doesn't seem like a book that would feature magical realism, but it is actually kind of magical realist, which is really cool in my opinion. Also, this has nothing to do with the content of the book. I just really enjoyed the cover of this book. Don't know why. Pretty sure that's why I bought this book in the first place. I really liked the cover, and I ended up really liking the story as well. So, that is the first book. And then the second book that I'm going to talk about is Between Shades of Grey by Ruta Sepetys. There it is. And this book also is not in our physical collection, but it is available on Libby, which is the new app that we're using instead of RV Digital. RV Digital, I believe, retired. So we now have Libby in our, that, you can check out books online as well, in addition to Hoopla. So check that out. And the first book you can check out on Libby is Between Shades of Grey by Ruta Sepetys. So this book is a historical fiction book. Also, I would probably rate this for like 15 and older. It's pretty dark. But it's a historical fiction book, and it is set in 1941, and there's a 15-year-old girl named Lena Vilkas, and she is from, I believe, Lithuania. I believe it's Lithuania, yeah. Stalin has sort of created, something similar to Hitler, where he wants to create basically an extermination list or a genocide of these people. And so he deports Lena and her family and other citizens of Lithuania to prison camps in Siberia, and they are sort of forced to endure really hard climate and hard work and, mistreatment, and Lena has to sort of fight to survive, and she has to, fight to help her family survive, and it's just a lot going on, and, sorry, someone's calling me. But, it's a lot to undertake for a 15-year-old, and it's heavy, but it's, you kind of follow her journey and how she goes through that situation. So I loved it. So, yes, this is a very dark book, and, given the current world we're in, heavy might not always be the thing you want to pick up and read, but I think that it's important to read books like this because they bring attention to a topic that you don't necessarily know a lot about. Like, I didn't really know a lot about that part of, history in World War II and what Stalin was doing. This is obviously historical fiction, but this is based off of, a real event. And it's, not talked about very often, so I appreciated the author talking about something that I don't feel like is talked about very often, and talking about a subject that isn't done very often in literature. I appreciated seeing that. Excuse me. And because of this, you learn a lot, and you start to really feel for Lena and her family. They were very good main characters. You felt sympathetic for them the whole time. You just wanted them to get out of the situation that they were in, and wanted them to be successful and survive and all be happy together again. And so, I really felt for Lena the whole time I was reading this book. This book also is very emotional. Sometimes that can kind of fall flat with books, is it doesn't really hit as hard because the writing, for some reason, isn't up to par, or the characters just aren't people that are sympathetic. But I think that Sepetys did a really good job at making really good characters and having really strong writing, and, really delivering that emotional impact on the reader. The next thing I think is important is it's realistic. Like, the things that happen in this book, it's not always happy, and it's not always everything works out, but there is still hope in there. She does a good job at playing with the two and making them work really well together and meshing together, which I really appreciated seeing this. So she was able to be realistic, but it wasn't like everything is always bad constantly. There was a good mix. And then I think the last thing too is it's just really like compulsively readable. Like, I think I finished this in maybe 3 days, which it's not like the biggest book ever, but when you are in school and you can't read very often, that's pretty fast. So those are the 2 books that I had to talk about today, and I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.